Never even think of answering Stoicism, Stoic wisdom. The question that will change everything you think you know. What if everything you believed about strength, success, and suffering was completely backwards? What if the very way you respond to life's hardest moments is actually making things worse? Today, we are going to go deep into the ancient philosophy that Roman emperors, enslaved men, and military generals all used to conquer the chaos inside themselves. This is Stoicism, not the watered-down version, not the Instagram quote version. The real thing, the kind that breaks you open and rebuilds you from the inside out. But here is the twist. We are not just going to explain it, we are going to challenge you. We are going to say the one thing no Stoic teacher wants you to hear. Never even think of answering Stoicism until you understand what it is truly asking of you. Because most people pick up this philosophy thinking it will make them cold, emotionless, untouchable. They are wrong. Dead wrong. Stoicism does not ask you to stop feeling. It asks you to stop being controlled by what you feel. That distinction will change your entire life if you let it stay with us. Share this with someone who is struggling. And if this channel speaks to your soul, subscribe right now and join thousands of people on this journey toward unshakable wisdom. The Stoics were not who you think they were. Before we go any further, we need to destroy a myth. Most people picture a Stoic as someone sitting in silence, face stone cold, refusing to cry at a funeral, refusing to laugh at a joke. They think Stoicism is about emotional suppression. It is not. The greatest Stoics in history were deeply passionate, deeply human people who chose to channel their emotions rather than be dragged by them. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor, wrote his private journal, what we now call Meditations, filled with raw vulnerability, self-doubt, grief, and longing. He was not a robot. He was a man wrestling with the weight of an entire empire on his shoulders, using philosophy as his lifeline. Epictetus was once an enslaved man who had no control over his body, his freedom, or his fate, and yet he became one of the most powerful thinkers of the ancient world. Seneca watched power corrupt everyone around him, lived in exile, faced death, and still wrote letters overflowing with compassion and love for humanity. These were not cold men. They were fire wrapped in discipline. They felt everything. They chose differently. And that choice, that moment between feeling and acting, is where Stoicism lives. If you have been sleeping on this philosophy because you thought it meant feeling less, wake up. It means becoming more than your feelings. What Stoicism is actually built on. At its core, Stoicism rests on one foundational idea that sounds simple but will rearrange your brain when you truly absorb it. Some things are in your control, and some things are not. That is it. That is the whole philosophy in one sentence. But the application of that idea is where people spend entire lifetimes. Epictetus called this the dichotomy of control. Your opinions, your desires, your responses, your values, these are yours. Everything else, the weather, other people's behavior, your reputation, your health, even your own death, these are not yours. They are externals. And Stoicism says, stop killing yourself over externals. Now, your mind is probably already pushing back. What do you mean my health is not in my control? What do you mean my reputation is not in my control? Here is what Stoicism means. You can exercise, eat well, sleep enough. But you cannot guarantee you will not get sick. So the outcome is external. The effort is yours. You can be honest, kind, and consistent. But you cannot control what people think of you. so the opinion is external. The character is yours. This shift in perspective does not make you passive. It makes you powerful. You stop wasting energy on what you cannot change and pour everything into what you can. The obstacle is not in your way, it is the way. One of the most electrifying ideas in Stoic philosophy comes from Marcus Aurelius himself. He wrote that the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. In plain language, your obstacles are not interruptions to your life. They are your life. They are the very material from which your character is built. Think about a time when everything went wrong. A relationship fell apart. A job disappeared. A health crisis appeared from nowhere. In that moment, you probably felt like the universe was against you. Stoicism says the universe was working with you, building you. The Stoic does not look at hardship and ask, "Why me?" The Stoic looks at hardship and asks, "What is this teaching me, and how do I use it?" This is not toxic positivity. Stoics do not pretend bad things are good. They look at bad things and ask how a person of virtue would respond. Because the response is always yours. Always. No matter what happens to your body, your bank account, your relationships, your response belongs to you alone. That is an extraordinary kind of freedom. Most people never discover it because they are too busy blaming their circumstances for their unhappiness. If this idea is landing for you right now, do yourself a favor, subscribe to this channel. Every week, we go deeper into wisdom that actually moves the needle in real life. Why you should never even think of answering Stoicism without this. Here is the warning we promised you. Here is why we said never even think of answering Stoicism, meaning, never try to summarize it, dismiss it, or claim you understand it, until you have wrestled with this one concept: virtue is the only true good. The Stoics believed that virtue, wisdom, courage, justice, and self-discipline was the only thing that could not be taken from you. Money can be lost. Fame fades. Bodies deteriorate. Relationships end. But the quality of your soul, that can only be given away by you. It cannot be stolen. It cannot be destroyed by external forces. This is why a Stoic could walk calmly toward their own execution. Not because they did not value life, but because they valued their virtue more. They knew that how they faced death said everything about who they were. Now apply that to your daily life. Your boss humiliates you in a meeting. Your partner says something cruel. Your friend betrays your trust. The Stoic response is not silence or suppression. It is a fierce, quiet question. What would a person of virtue do right now? Not what feels satisfying. Not what they deserve. What does virtue require? That question will never steer you wrong. That question will build a life you are actually proud of. Negative visualization, the ancient practice that rewires gratitude. Here is a Stoic practice that sounds dark but is actually one of the most beautiful tools ever invented for human happiness. It is called negative visualization, or premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. Before you panic, hear this out. Every morning, or whenever you feel yourself taking things for granted, the Stoics recommended briefly imagining losing the things you love. Your health, your partner, your child, your home, your freedom. Not to dwell in anxiety or manufacture sadness, but to wake up gratitude that has gone numb. When you truly feel, even for 30 seconds, that something you love could be gone, it becomes precious again. The coffee you drink mindlessly becomes a ritual of grace. The person sleeping next to you becomes a miracle you almost forgot to notice. Seneca wrote that we should live each day as though it could be our last, not with reckless abandon, but with full presence and genuine appreciation. The Stoics were not morbid. They were awake. They refused to sleepwalk through life assuming tomorrow was guaranteed. Because tomorrow is never guaranteed, and the people who forget that are the ones who waste the most of what they are given. Try this tonight before you sleep. Think of 3 things that could be gone tomorrow and are still here today. Really feel their absence for a moment. Then open your eyes to what is still in your hands. That is Stoicism working in real time. Amor fati, the most radical love imaginable. There is a Latin phrase the Stoics embraced that Nietzsche later made famous, amor fati. It means love of fate, not acceptance of fate, not tolerance of fate, love. The Stoics, and especially Marcus Aurelius, taught that the path to peace was not just accepting what happens to you but actually loving it. All of it, the betrayals, the losses, the failures, the humiliations, the grief. Now, this sounds impossible. How do you love the death of someone you cherished? How do you love being fired, cheated on, diagnosed with something terrifying? The Stoics are not asking you to pretend it does not hurt. They are asking you to look at the full picture. This moment, even this painful, ugly, heartbreaking moment, is part of the fabric of your one and only life. It belongs to you, and you can either spend your energy raging against it or you can ask, how do I grow from this? How does this moment become part of something greater? Amor fati is not weakness. It is the deepest kind of strength. It is the warrior who does not resent the battle. It is the artist who finds beauty in the broken material. It is the human being who looks at the worst day of their life and says, this too is mine. This too I can use. That is not surrender. That is mastery. The Stoic view on anger, and why most people get it wrong. Let us talk about anger because this is where most modern interpretations of Stoicism completely miss the mark. People read Stoic philosophy and think the goal is to never get angry. Then they try to suppress every flicker of frustration and wonder why they feel hollow and resentful. That is not Stoicism. That is emotional repression dressed up in philosophical clothing. Seneca wrote an entire essay on anger called De Ira, on anger. And what he said is subtle but life-changing. He did not say never feel anger. He said never act from anger. There is a massive difference. The feeling arises. That is human. That is biology. That is honest. But the Stoic creates a space between the feeling and the response, and in that space, wisdom lives. He compared anger to a fire. Left alone, it burns itself out. But when you feed it, when you rehearse the grievance, justify the rage, plan your revenge, you are adding fuel. And eventually the fire consumes not just the person who wronged you but everything around you, including yourself. Stoicism teaches you to feel the heat without becoming the flame, to acknowledge the wound without becoming the weapon. When you master the pause between stimulus and response, you become someone who cannot be weaponized by other people's behavior. That is freedom of the rarest kind. Memento mori, remember you will die. Perhaps the most confronting and most liberating of all Stoic practices is memento mori. Remember that you will die. Not as a threat, not as morbid pessimism, as a clarifying truth that makes life more vivid, more urgent, and more meaningful. Marcus Aurelius wrote repeatedly about death, not with dread, but with a kind of philosophical tenderness. He noted that emperors, generals, and philosophers all alike return to dust. No name, no achievement, no legacy could hold back the tide. And rather than find that depressing, he found it freeing. If everything is temporary, then this moment is precious. If death is coming regardless, then the only question worth asking is, am I living well right now? The Stoics would carry coins, symbols, even whisper the phrase to themselves during moments of pride or success, memento mori. Not to diminish the moment but to deepen it, to remember that life is finite and that finite things are the most beautiful of all. When you truly accept that your days are numbered, you stop wasting them on petty conflicts, endless scrolling, manufactured dramas, and the opinions of people who will also be gone one day. You start choosing your life deliberately. That is the gift of remembering death. It makes you come fully alive. What Stoicism demands of you in relationships. Stoicism is often portrayed as a solo philosophy, the lone sage on the mountaintop, needing no one. This is a complete distortion. The Stoics were deeply relational beings who thought carefully about love, friendship, family, and community. But they held a different standard for how to navigate those connections. Seneca wrote beautifully about friendship, saying that a friend is someone with whom you can share everything, your fears, your flaws, your hopes, and trust that it will be held with care. But he also warned about attaching your happiness to any person's continuation in your life. Not because people do not matter, but because if your peace of mind depends entirely on another person's choices, behavior, or continued presence, you have handed your freedom to someone else. This is not coldness. This is not emotional unavailability. It is the difference between loving someone and needing someone. The Stoic loves deeply, gives fully, commits completely, and simultaneously remains whole within themselves. They do not love less. They love better. They show up not from fear of abandonment or hunger for validation but from genuine, overflowing care. And when relationships end, as some inevitably do, they grieve, they feel, and then they return to themselves. Because they never fully left. If you want relationships built on genuine strength rather than desperate need, Stoicism has something to teach you. The daily practice, how to actually live this. Enough theory. Here is how the Stoics actually practiced this philosophy in their daily lives. And how you can too, starting tonight. Morning reflection was non-negotiable. Marcus Aurelius began every day by asking what he might face, and gratitude, arrogance, cruelty from others, and reminding himself that these people are not enemies but fellow human beings struggling with their own inner warfare. He prepared his mind the way a soldier prepares their armor. Before the day could wound him, he had already visited every possible wound and chosen his response. Evening review was equally sacred. Seneca described sitting with himself at the end of each day and asking 3 questions. Where did I go wrong today? What did I do well? How can I be better tomorrow? Not with self-punishment. The Stoics were firm that shame was not useful, but with clear-eyed, honest self-assessment. The examined life is the Stoic life. Not perfect, examined. Journaling was the connective tissue between intention and action. Writing forces clarity. It slows the racing mind. It catches the thoughts that otherwise evaporate. If Marcus Aurelius, ruler of the known world, needed to write to stay anchored in his values, what does that say about the rest of us? Subscribe to this channel right now for weekly deep dives into Stoic practices that you can apply to your real, messy, beautiful life today. Hit the bell so you never miss a lesson. Why the world needs Stoicism more than ever right now. We live in a world designed to destabilize you. Social media is engineered to trigger outrage because outrage drives engagement. News cycles are built to amplify fear because fear keeps eyes on screens. Consumer culture is structured around the idea that you are incomplete, that the next purchase, the next relationship, the next achievement will finally make you enough. Every force in the modern world is conspiring to make you reactive, anxious, and perpetually dissatisfied. Stoicism is the antidote, not a retreat from the world but a way of moving through it that cannot be manipulated. When you know what is truly in your control and you stop hemorrhaging energy over everything else, you become immune to the machinery of manufactured outrage. When you have defined your values and you answer to them rather than to the crowd, you cannot be pulled apart by shifting social winds. When you practice memento mori and amor fati, the anxiety that drives compulsive consumption loses its grip on you. This does not mean disengaging from society. The Stoics were deeply civic, deeply engaged. Marcus Aurelius governed an empire. Cato fought for the Roman Republic. These were not monks hiding from the world. They were warriors who brought their philosophy into the arena. Stoicism is not a retreat. It is an upgrade, and the world desperately needs more people who have taken that upgrade. The most powerful Stoic quote you have never heard. Everyone knows the famous ones. You may have seen them on coffee mugs and phone wallpapers. But there is a line from Epictetus that rarely gets the attention it deserves, and it might be the most quietly devastating thing ever written about the human condition. He said that people are not disturbed by things, but by the views they take of things. Read that again. Not by things, by the views they take of things. This means your suffering, every bit of it that is not purely physical, is manufactured in your own mind. That is not blame, that is liberation. Because if your mind made it, your mind can unmake it. If the story you tell about what happened is what's hurting you, then a different story is possible. A truer story, a story that includes your strength, your agency, your capacity to respond rather than simply react. This does not minimize real pain. Grief is real. Injustice is real, loss is real, but the narrative you wrap around that pain, the meaning you assign, the identity you build from it, that is always yours to author. Stoicism gives you the pen back. Most people do not even realize the pen was taken from them. They think the story just happens to them. The Stoic knows better. A final word: never stop studying this. We called this, never even think of answering Stoicism, because Stoicism is not a question with a single answer. It is not a philosophy you finish. It is a practice you return to every single day, in every single circumstance, with every single breath. The moment you think you have figured it out, life will hand you something that proves you have not, and the Stoic in you will smile, because that is not a failure. That is another teacher arriving. The ancient Stoics did not claim to be sages. They claimed to be seekers, students of their own lives, perpetual beginners in the art of living well. That humility is part of the philosophy. The second you think you have arrived, you have stopped moving. And Stoicism is always moving, asking more of you, calling you higher, demanding that you show up with more honesty, more courage, more love for whatever comes next. So never stop, never settle, never think you have answered this philosophy, because it will always have another question waiting. And those questions are the most valuable thing any of us will ever be given. Subscribe and walk this path with us if this spoke to something in you. If even one idea landed and shifted something in how you see your life, then you owe it to yourself to stay on this path. Subscribe to this channel right now. Every single week, we go deeper into Stoic wisdom, ancient philosophy, and the practical tools that help real people build real lives of meaning, resilience, and purpose. Hit the subscribe button, ring that notification bell, share this with one person in your life who is going through something hard, because wisdom shared doubles in power. You are not on this journey alone. Thousands of people in this community are walking the same road, asking the same questions, fighting the same battles. Come join us. The philosophy has been waiting for you. This is Stoic Wisdom. We will see you in the next lesson. Subscribe to Stoic Wisdom on YouTube for more lessons that will challenge, inspire, and transform the way you move through the world.